Mr. Pablo, Senior Environmental Economist from World Bank. And Ms. R. Savitri, Additional Director General, Social Statistics Division, MOSPI. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Today, as more and more people are becoming conscious and responsible towards the environment, we hope that a day would soon come when our planet, the flora and the fauna it offers, would be cherished and respected by us every minute, every day. We now move to the second technical session of the day, which is focused on the discussion on ocean accounting. It is my pleasure to inform you that NSO India has joined the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership and is determined to compile ocean accounts in the coming years. The current session is a panel discussion on ocean accounting, which will be moderated by Dr. K.S. Kavikumar. Dr. Kumar is currently working as professor at Madras School of Economics, Chennai. He has more than 25 years of experience in research, teaching, and industry. His research interests include economics of the environment, the economics of climate change, and development economics. Dr. Kumar has been associated with various international and national institutions, including the World Bank, International Institute for Applied System Analysis, Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, GIZ, British High Commission, Tata Energy Research Institute, Institute of Economic Growth, etc., to name a few for various research assignments. He has coordinated several activities of the Center for Excellence in Environmental Economics, supported by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Among the panelists, we have Dr. TVS Uday Bhaskar, scientist in COIS, Hyderabad, Dr. P. Shinoj from CMFRI Kochi, Dr. K. Ramu, scientist NCCR, and Mr. James from World Bank. Each of the panelists would be talking about different perspectives about the ocean accounting, followed by a discussion. I now hand over the floor to Dr. Kavikumar.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Am I audible? Kindly let me know when whether I'm audible or not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Kumar.
Yeah, I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. At the outset, I would like to thank SSD MOSPI for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts, as well as moderate this session, panel discussion on ocean and water-related accounting, including fisheries and aquaculture. So let me take a little bit of time because we are already running quite behind the schedule. I don't want to keep you waiting too much for your lunch break. But let me just take a few minutes to introduce very briefly the notion of ocean accounts. I can share my screen. Let me just quickly do that. I hope you're able to see my screen. Yeah, basically the discussion on ocean accounts, if you want to look at from a policy perspective, it enables measuring the ocean economy and measuring sustainable use of ocean resources, all of which actually would be supporting India's efforts towards enhancing the sustainable contribution of blue economy, and also most importantly, improving the livelihood of coastal communities, and equally importantly, preserving the marine biodiversity. The other way to look at the policy relevance of ocean accounts is they serve as the data foundation for area-based planning efforts. India has made significant progress in this direction by looking at the coastal and marine spatial plans. We have examples from states like Pondicherry, West Bengal, and islands like Lakshadweep. And we also have a large-scale exercise just recently finished in terms of developing the framework and action plan for National Coastal and Marine Spatial Plan, which was spearheaded by Ministry of Environment, forest and climate change. Of course, the ocean accounts have a direct relevance to the ongoing environmental economic accounting that has been we have been discussing since morning here. So, which is of course, MOSFI has been MOSFI as well as MYFCC have been at the forefront of doing these exercises. Ocean accounts have been, as we have been told repeatedly by many speakers since morning, has been identified as one of the focus areas for the strategy for environment economic accounts in India over the next 5 years. So in all these fronts, it looks pertinent to have a clearer and more wider understanding of ocean accounts. Another way to look at the need for ocean accounts is that first of all, we have the economic, social, and environmental data concerning the oceans is highly fragmented, probably in a non-standardized format, and it's only partially represented in our national accounting system. So there is a definite need to kind of bring it on board into the national accounting system in a more structured manner. Of course, also ocean accounts organize the relevant data into a common framework using agreed statistical standards and methods and formats that are commonly used by the NSO's National Statistical Offices. Of course, as we have discussed from the previous session, ocean accounts provide countries with the means to go beyond the GDP and essentially align with sustainable development goals, in line with goals such as SDG 14, 15.9, 17.19, and so on. So these are all the obvious ways in which we need to be actually looking at the reason for involving ourselves with the ocean accounts. As has been mentioned, India is now a member of the Global Ocean Accounting Partnership, and there has been a lot of literature on this actually in terms of developing the framework and so on. The framework as such is not quite different from the environmental accounting framework as such. It starts with an asset framework, goes to the flows to the economy, also flows into the environment from the economy, and then the way in which the contribution is made to the economy is highlighted to the various indices, and also the governance system that is prevailing over is captured in this accounting framework. So it's a comprehensive framework that actually brings on board both the condition as well as the value of the ocean goods and services. There have been some bits and pieces of works on the valuation part. There has been work done in the recent past on trying to put some kind of a economic valuation at a macro level on the marine coastal ecosystem services, goods and services. It is not a comprehensive one, but nevertheless, we do have at least get some sense of what is it overall value. This is measured in terms of 2012-13 in rupees 1.5 trillion, which essentially comprises around 3.2% of the NNP in that year. It's not, as I said already, not the comprehensive one, but gives us a sense of direction to look at. Within this, of course, the provisioning was considered assessed as 26%. The maximum, of course, was accounting for regulating services, which currently doesn't get into your accounting framework. Recreational also partially gets accounted in our 30% of the 1.5 trillion that we talked about earlier is essentially getting into the. But what are the issues that we need to be flagging for discussion here? I think there are a lot of challenges while trying to do ocean accounts. Some of them I just quickly flag here before I leave it to the floor and esteemed speakers to dwell upon. One is about the choice of ecosystem goods and services. Should we be looking at what we already know, are easy to handle kind of sectors and services, or dwell deep into things that are currently not properly getting accounted, like for instance, the regulatory services that has been highlighted from the previous study as one of the kind of more important things. The other issue is choice of units. Standard definitions of spatial, there should be some kind of, should there be a standard definition to spatial assessment units, or can units differ from country to country, or pilot studies to subnational to national level assessments? These are issues that, of course, need to be well thought about. The data gaps, of course, is the major issues. For instance, a lot can be achieved through the existing data and global data sets, national as well as the global data sets. But the way in which the informal and subsistence nature of dependence prevails in countries like India by a large amount of the coastal communities on coastal resources, it makes it imperative to address the data gaps a little more sensitively to avoid undervaluation. And that's a major concern with regard to ocean accounts, like any other accounts, but probably a little more problematic in case of ocean accounts. The other issues, of course, is major concern in the ocean accounts, in my view, is the stocks versus flows accounts. Unlike the terrestrial ecosystems, it could be significantly more challenging to develop stock accounts in the ocean context. Such exercise is not only kind of required for better conceptual clarity and accounting principles and methodological issues, but also greater cooperation and collaboration between sovereign nations, because the oceans are obviously, there is no jurisdictional boundaries that you can easily draw there. So those are issues that we need to be concerned about. Of course, also the issues related to upscaling from pilot studies. Many global evidences right now are available at pilot studies, micro regions, and so on. Taking them or upscaling them from those pilot studies to subnational or national level ocean accounting will call upon certain conceptual clarity and also standardization processes. And those are the issues probably we need to be looking at a little more carefully. These are some just issues I'm flagging upfront for discussion, but I'm sure our esteemed speakers will be taking us through many more issues to be looking at. The structure as such for the panel is fairly tight. We have around 4 speakers talking to us on a variety of issues. I'll introduce one by one each of them, but first to start with, we have Dr. TVS Uday Bhaskar. He's a scientist at the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, Hyderabad. He's heading the Ocean Data Management Division, which archives heterogeneous data from in situ remote sensing and ocean general circulation models, etc. He's also coordinating the International Training Center for Operational Oceanography, which is the regional training center under the Ocean Teacher Global Academy of Belgium. So Dr. Uday Bhaskar would be speaking to us on the vision for India's blue economy and the role of national ocean accounts. I now hand over the floor to Dr. Uday Bhaskar.
Yeah, good afternoon. Hope you're able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Uday.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just share my presentation. Can the host enable me to present from my system, please?
Are you able to share?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hope you're able to see my presentation.
Not yet.
Able to see?
I'm afraid not yet. Is there anybody else is able to see? Sorry, we are all operating remotely. So
No.
yeah, okay. Can you try once again, Dr. Bhaskar?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see now.
Yeah, we are able to.
We can see now, Dr. Bhaskar. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for making me a part of this particular session. So I'll be giving a brief about the vision for India's blue economy and the role of national ocean accounts. But of course, my work was made easy by our moderator. He has already given enough information about that. So I'll be just skipping as much as possible what he has covered and then try to cover with respect to the service components from our organization and how they account for the blue economy, and also how they can be taken into account for the national ocean accounts that is going to be like accounted for in the future. So this is a brief outline. So I'll be slightly touching upon the vision of blue economy, India's vision, and then also talk about the national ocean accounting. And then I'll then talk about what is our mission and then who are our stakeholders, because that's how they account for our blue economy. And then I talk about briefly about some of the services and how they account for blue economy, and also then what is the impact of these services on the blue economy. So this is in brief I'm going to talk about. So coming to the vision, I think most of you are already aware of this. Like first introduced in 1994 under UN SDG goals. And then by our Prime Minister during his 74th Independence Day speech, he has further emphasized on this, saying like it need to be recognizing the importance of economic and strategic access for the triple S, which forms the basis for a robust principle for India. And we are happy to say, like, that India is the first country to move forward in this aspect of blue economy, whereas it has formed the Department of Ocean Development way back in 1980s. Later, it was reorganized as Ministry of Earth Sciences. This Ministry of Earth Sciences, where I work, has already come up with many programs that can really make a big change with respect to the blue economy. And the programs like Deep Ocean Mission and Ocean Away from the Space, and also we have got a lot of instruments operating out in the sea, which we call the launching of the data buoys all across the Indian coast. All these are accounting for this blue economy initiative, because these are all very much involved in many of the coastal services, which I'll talk about in the following slides. And these coastal services are really having a huge impact for the blue economy of India. And coming to the value addition from the blue economy, this includes things from coastal manufacturing services. The services is what our organization is covering, and maritime trading, shipping, offshore and coastal energy, deep sea minerals, aquaculture, fisheries, and marine related technologies. And I'm very happy to say, like, there are many sister concerns of our, and also many other organizations which are working under Government of India, and they are already working toward these goals. So, for example, I just mentioned few here. Coastal services, fisheries, maritime trade, and all, we cover some of the aspects from INCOIS, which I work for, and marine related technologies, offshore and coastal energies, where our sister concern NIOT in Chennai works for, and deep sea minerals and all that, NIOT in Chennai and NCPO in Goa. So I just not covered the exhaustive list, but just to say, like, few of these, the value additions for the blue economy is being already worked upon by these organizations scattered across the country. So coming to the national ocean accounting, this has already been extensively covered by our moderator, so I'm not going to repeat it again, but I just want to stress upon few aspects where, like, for example, the ocean accounting compiles information on diverse disciplines like biodiversity, carbon, coral reefs, tourism, and resource management. But we at INCOIS covers things like coral reefs, tourism, and then the resources, how we can effectively use this ocean resources that can impact or have a huge impact in the blue economy. And then coming to the ocean accounts, we know, like, it helps us to make better decisions about how we manage our marine ecosystem and resources. And it helps us having a good decision, both in terms of private and public sectors. And it also involves mainly jobs, identifying the jobs and industries which can rely on this specific ocean accounts. So with this, a few objectives at the background. Now I'll try to give upon one aspect of the Ministry of Earth Sciences from the perspective of INCOIS, and then similar way all our sister concerns are working in their respective fields, trying to account for this national ocean accounting, and also as well as the blue economy also. So our mission is to provide ocean information advisory services to society, industry, government agencies, and scientific community through sustained ocean observations and constant improvement through systematic and focused research. So with respect to these services itself, we have got many of the stakeholders. They are like fishermen, coastal population, navigators, ports and harbors, maritime industries, mainly the oil and shipping, and then power agencies, industries involved in that, and Navy, Coast Guards, and marine policy makers, disaster management agencies, and coastal tourism, and state administrators, and then academia and research. So these are all the stakeholders. We can, seeing these names itself, we can understand like they all are indirectly contributing to the blue economy of the country. So this one slide gives an example, like, how and what is the blue economy and what are all the different things that can we work towards achieving this blue economy. For example, the renewable energies, fisheries, maritime transport and waste management, and tourism and climate change. So our agency is involved with respect to studies on tourism. For example, we work with rip currents management in the coast, which warns people about dangerous rip currents so that improves the tourism. Climate change, our people are working in climate change for the next 100 years using ocean general circulation models. So that can give you an idea how much of impact the climate change is going to have on our coastal shoreline changes and then sea level rise and things like that. Fisheries, we are involved in fisheries, and maritime transport also. We have got a division which works on ocean state forecast, which really has lots and lots of products that can really contribute to the blue economy. And also the waste management. Of late, we started to work with marine litter also, and our sister concern NCC are also working on these particular things. So all these things which works towards blue economy is already being accounted for from our organization. And I'll just skip this. So these are all the services that has got huge impact on the blue economy. For example, the marine fishery zone advisories that we give, mainly for potential fishing zones and as species specific, also like tuna and then hilsa. And then ocean state forecasting, which I'm talking about. This caters to all the hazards across the coastal line. And then these are all the stakeholders that are being receiving and to all our services. Early warning, tsunami storms as highway alerts and coral bleaching alerts. And then also we do a lot of special services for Indian Navy and Coast Guard. So all of them has a huge impact on blue economy. There are many studies that have been done trying to understand how much of blue economy impacts these services can have. And then I'll just show those slides also. So these are the services that we give and the stakeholders, and then also the information that we provide to them. Like, for example, fisheries and aquaculture of the blue economy. So we give POs and tuna advisories and also aquaculture site selections. And then renewable energy, we have got studies on wind, wave, tides and surface currents. This is being provided to the policymakers for studies on renewable energies. Seaports and shippings, we also give for example, inland vessel limits and things like that for people to work upon. This is mainly for the shipping industry. Offshore hydrocarbons and then marine biotechnology, tourism, as I already mentioned, some of the things like harmful algal blooms, coral reefs, and then rip currents and information. So this is mainly for disaster management.
5483 and the password is 8.
And we use science-based products and services that can support the development of the blue economy. We have a marine integrated management based on ecological environments. You can see we do a lot of time case analysis, climate projections. We also do seasonal to sub-seasonal forecasts, and also we do a lot of short-term forecasts. This is mainly for information for decision making, a user-specific impact-based type of studies that we do. Disaster management, prevention, fisheries and ecosystem, and then marine industry support. So these are all those things that we are working towards, which has got impact on the blue economy. So this one slide shows how we have real-time observations from various sources, heterogeneous platforms from remote sensing, remote institute and all that, which we use for modeling and research, and we generate ocean information advisory services, which we disseminate in multi-mode to end users all across the coast. All of them account for huge impact on the blue economy. You can see these are the stakeholders, and these are the services that we provide for the coastal population. And these are the independent studies that have been done on the impact of the socio-economic impacts of our services. For example, there is an independent study by NCR done in 2010, which talks about the impact of the PFZ for the blue economy estimated to be between 34,000 to 50,000 crores. And they also have studied ICAR, have studied how much reduction in the carbon dioxide because of this particular PFZ service that INCOIS is giving, which comes to around 150,000 kilograms of CO2 reduction. That really goes for a clean environment, clean atmosphere. And then also there are other very recent studies also being done on ocean state forecasting, tsunami and other things, which talks about like, how if you give a no go-ahead mission, how much it really contributes to, for example, around 4,200 crores that it can give. And these are all, again, different studies that talks about how much it can really contribute to the blue economy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Uday Bhaskar, for providing a comprehensive summary of various stats that INCOS collects and how it actually facilitates the blue economic assessment or measurement in Indian context. Thank you very much for your comprehensive summary. We'll move on to next speaker, Dr. Shinoz, who is working as a senior scientist, the Fishery Resource Assessment and Economics Division of CMFR Cochin. Prior to this, he served as a scientist at the National Institute for Agriculture, Economics and Policy Research in Delhi. He works mainly in the area of public policy in India's agricultural fishery sector, with special focus on marketing, price policy, trade, growth, and commodity modeling. He has been a Norman Borlaug Fellow at the Department of Applied Economics and Management, Cornell University, and visiting scholar at the Food and Agricultural Policy Research Institute, Iowa State University, and visiting scientist at IFPRI, Washington. So Dr. Shinoz will be speaking to us on accounting for marine fisheries, aquaculture, and fish processing and fish provisioning services. Over to you, Dr. Shinoz.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Shinoz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kavikumar, for introducing me. And I'm also honored to be part of this panel discussion. So my topic today is accounting for marine fisheries, aquaculture, fish processing, and fish provisioning services as part of blue accounting. Is it moving? Okay. Yeah. Let me start by emphasizing on the importance of fisheries sector in India's economy. Fisheries sector has been growing at a relatively very fast pace over years. Over the last 1 decade, the sector has been growing at a rate of close to 10%. India's total fish production in 2019-20 was about 13.4 million metric tons, of which 3.72 came from marine sector and 10.43 million metric tons came from inland sector. The sector contributes about 1.24% to the gross value added of India's GDP, of India, and about 7.28% of GV of agriculture and allied sectors. Fishery sector is also a major exporting sector, wherein about 1.28 million metric tons of seafood products are being exported. Was exported in 2019-20, which was valued at more than 46,000 crores. Now, let me just give a brief of the scope of my presentation. I'll be strictly limiting my presentation only to marine fisheries, aquaculture, and post-harvest sector. I'll be focusing mainly on identification of sectors and subsectors, including untapped activities that fall in the purview of fisheries and aquaculture in blue economy. That means I will not be touching upon other non-fishery or non-aquaculture sectors, which could be part of blue economy. I will also not talk about ecosystem services as part of the ocean economy. Further, I'll also give I'll try to give some insights on the sources of data and other information related to blue accounting purpose. This is the overview of my presentation. I'll first discuss fisheries and aquaculture accounting vis-a-vis blue economy definition, broad coverage of sectors and subsectors, data status in fisheries, aquaculture, and post-harvest sectors, techno-economics of marine fisheries and mariculture, because this becomes part of input accounting, particularly to reach at some important coefficients in the accounting process, and other relevant points. Sorry, the slide is moving a little slower. Okay. We have a beautiful definition of blue economy, which was given by the working group of Economic Advisory Council of Prime Minister of India. So as per this definition, it says that blue economy refers to exploring and optimizing the potential of oceans and seas, which are under India's legal jurisdiction for socio-economic development while presenting the health of oceans. The blue economy links production and consumption to capacity and envisages integrated approach to economic development and environmental sustainability. It covers both marine, that is offshore resources, as well as coastal, that is onshore resources. So there is a perfect definition for blue economy. But then now is the time for us to understand, dig deeper into what are these concepts, what are the boundaries of these sectors or subsectors, like what is meant by offshore resources, what are coastal fishing and onshore fishery related activities, and so on. So there are some relevant questions in this regard. What do the terms offshore, coastal, onshore refer to in this context? What is the overall jurisdiction of blue economy in terms of geographic coverage as well as activities? Whether inland freshwater fishing and aquaculture should be part of blue economy accounting? So what is the what is the scope of onshore, how far it is, and so on? Whether the entire marine fish value chain, from landing till the fish reaches consumers, as well as fishing related industries, be part of blue economy accounting irrespective of geographic boundaries. So these are some relevant questions that we should be addressing at this stage. Yeah, so for that purpose, I think there should be better clarity on some of the terminology, some of the technical terms that are used in this context. So we have near shore or coastal fisheries, which is happening within 12 nautical mile from the shoreline, or this is typically the territorial water fishing activity, which is fully under the jurisdiction of state governments, coastal state governments. Then beyond that, fishing is called offshore fisheries. That happens between 12 nautical miles to 200 nautical miles. 200 nautical miles is the distance from shore to till the last point of India's legal jurisdiction. The entire area is called exclusive economic zone. Then after that, we have internal waters fishery, fishery associated with estuaries towards the land, associated with estuaries, backwaters, creeks, lagoons, etc. Then there is another term called distant water fisheries, which is happening beyond 200 nautical miles, which is there are things about whether it is legally which comes under legal jurisdiction of India, or whether it is areas beyond national jurisdiction, and so on. So those things have to be clarified. And then we have deep sea fisheries in high seas, using trawls and lines operating high seas for fishing in the depths below 200 meters. So this term is strictly defined in terms of depth of fishing, and not in terms of distance of fishing from the shore. And then and after that, we have onshore fisheries, wherein fisheries, aquaculture taking place on the shore, within reasonable distance from the shoreline towards the land side. So here there is a question: how far from the shore is onshore? Does it cover the entire inland fishing aquaculture activities, or is restricted to a limited area from the shoreline? So these are in fact policy questions which are to be answered. Different countries have different boundaries defined for this, and as our previous speaker mentioned, it is very difficult to define boundaries for such concepts. But certainly we have to attempt this and try to find answers for all these questions. Now, for practical purposes, I understand that blue economy include fish harvest, culture, post-harvest, allied activities taking place in the sea within India's legal jurisdiction. All other goods and services, non-fishery, certainly, with origin elsewhere, but for use in the seas. That means all the input components that goes into fishing and all other activities, non-fishing activities. And then there is a third component, which is the other goods and services produced and originated in the sea, but for use elsewhere, out of the seas. And now, what should be the jurisdiction of all these activities, sectors and subsectors? So I think as far as fish harvest culture in the sea or water, the geographical coverage or boundary should be within the EZ or such internationally accepted and allocated boundaries, including the ABNJ. And then apart from that, the internal waters, including estuaries, backwaters, creeks, and lagoons. That means the entire inland fishing, aquaculture happening away from the from a reasonable distance from the shoreline should not be part of blue accounting or blue economy. This is how I see it, but certainly policy has to be taken on this. Then next comes fish harvest culture, post-harvest and allied activities happening on the shore. So here the boundary should be within the designated fishing villages. There are about 3477 fishing villages as per Marine Fisheries Census 2016, which are all close to the shore. And I feel only these fishing villages need to be considered for onshore activities related to fishing and aquaculture, because most of the activities, whether it is processing activities, fish meal production, hatchery related activities, they all happen very close to the shore, mostly very well within the fishing village boundaries. So I think that more than 90% of all the activities come within this are located within the fishing villages. So that could be very safely taken as the boundary for fish harvest culture and post-harvest activities happening on shore. As far as other goods and services with origin elsewhere but for use in the seas, there need not be any particular geographic boundary, because these are inputs which can come or can be produced anywhere on the land. As far as other goods and services produced or originated in the sea or water but for use elsewhere, here the jurisdiction should be or can be exclusive economic zone or such internationally accepted and allocated boundaries. But then the internationally accepted or allocated boundaries means India has certain allocated areas outside of the EEZ where the country is permitted to undertake economic activities, such as those activities part of the deep ocean mission. So you must be aware that the central Indian Ocean Basin has been designated by the UN International Seabed Authority, where India is planning to undertake and elaborate deep sea mining activities. And apart from that, the internal factors, including estuaries, backwaters, and creeks, also should be part of the boundary. And then fish and fish products and other marine products value chains, there need not be any particular boundary. And then coming to the subsectors and sectors, I'm not reading all of them, all the categories, but broadly there should be 4 broad categories within marine fisheries, aquaculture, and post-harvest sectors, and so on, and fishing allied activities. So the first will be marine fisheries, aquaculture, and fish seed production sector, where where all the harvesting of marine fish, crustaceans, mollusks would come, and then harvesting of all these. Mariculture, which is culture of fish in the sea. Mariculture in the internal waters, collection of seeds and fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Gathering of other wild marine organisms such as sponges, pearls, corals, algae, and so on. Fish seed production, onshore marine and freshwater aquariums, and so on.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you please wrap up?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So these are the 2 sectors, and then the third one is fishing, fish culture related activities, and fish processing activities. Now, coming to CMFRI's activities as far as data collection is concerned, CMFRI is undertaking a very elaborate exercise of collecting landing statistics across the country to 6,600 68 kilometers from the coastline. So this is the history of the marine fisheries data collection done by CMFRI. The information pertains to catch, effort, biological variables, socioeconomic variables, and so on. So it started in fact in 47 onwards itself. Right now we have a very elaborate system of fish catch statistics collection. And then this is the species diversity. We cover around 800 species, and this is the stratification, how is happening. Stratification across space as well as time. And then these are the further details on the sampling framework, stratification, and other details. What are the variables covered? And so we also come out every year with the marine fish landing statistics, year-wise. And then another major activity that CMFRI is conducting is the marine fishery census, which is done along with the DADF, Department of Agriculture. Right now it is Ministry of Fisheries. And then the census is conducted every 5 years. So far we have conducted for the years 1980, 2005, 2010 and 16, and it covers fishermen population, gender-wise occupation, craft and gear, infrastructure facilities, and so on. So this is the some data from the census over the years across the census years, and then again some of the employment activities, and then details on the crafts and gear. And then here I have a set of slides. I'm not going into the details, but input cost and revenue, which can be, these estimates can be utilized for input accounting. So here I have this economic estimates for different marine fishing activities, mariculture activities, and this is for green mussel and seaweed, and so on. So you can see the yellow color highlighted numbers are those share of inputs as share of gross revenue. And then I'm finishing my presentation here with, this is the last slide. And apart from the above aspects, I would also bring your focus into some of the less looked at aspects. Like presently there is no survey mechanism on credible estimates for inland capture fish production, so there should be a elaborate mechanism for that. And it may be also thought to bring about separate estimates for inland capture and inland aquaculture production. Right now it is together. And then also coverage of NIC framework, it is not, many of the emerging sectors are actually not covered. So if you see those specific activities, you can find many such data gaps. And then also household consumption expenditure survey should be a bit more elaborate with further subdivision on the category of fish. And then also, I would appeal that it would be in the interest of the country and the fishery sector in general, for introducing a situation assessment survey covering all the fish farmers and marine fishers. So thank you so much. This is a wonderful opportunity. And on behalf of ICRCMFRI, I thank you everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas, for this wonderful exposition on various aspects related to the, especially the boundaries related to the context of fisheries and aquaculture. These are very contentious issues, and you apprised us excellently on those aspects. I have really a tight job to really function here. We have very little time and 2 more speakers to go. I request Dr. Ramu and Dr. James to restrict their presentations to 5 minutes each. I now turn to Dr. Ramu, who is currently coordinating the national program on seawater quality monitoring along the coastal waters of India. His research interests are biological oceanography, organic pollution, and marine litter and fisheries. So he specializes in the monitoring anthropogenic contaminants in marine environment. He will be speaking to us on approach towards development of condition accounts for oceans. Over to you, Dr. Ramu. You can speak for 5 minutes if that's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, for the introduction. And I won't take much of time because already we are running almost an hour late. So as introduced by the Chair, I'll be talking on the approach towards development of the condition accounts for the ocean. And I would like to highlight the importance of the oceans in supporting the economic and as well as other human activities while also being critical to the climate. So as you can see that oceans regulates the climate and also removes about 10 times more CO2 from the atmosphere. So oceans have a lot of important role to play. The previous speakers have talked in detail about ecosystem accounting, which broadly involves 5 components. I'll be speaking mainly on the ecosystem conditions. So that means the ocean conditions for which describe they include the variables which are quantitative metrics that describe the individual characteristics of an ecosystem asset. When we say ecosystem, it can be a forest ecosystem, a desert ecosystem, but here we are concerned about the marine ecosystem. And these ecosystem condition accounts, what is the usefulness of it? They synthesize the information about the changes over time in the state of the ecosystem assets. And this is the broad, this is the flow of how the ecosystem condition works. There are biotic and abiotic characteristics. And then to achieve that, we do the environmental monitoring, and then the finally it goes into the policy and the decision making. And this ecosystem condition accounts has the potential to make balanced decisions for both near-term policy and as well as the long-term sustainability. So I'll be speaking on the what are the variables for the marine shelf and the coastal ecosystem. These are the variables which I have taken from the CR document and from the table by Keith et al. 2020. So it's a combination of both abiotic characteristics and the biotic characteristics. When you see in the abiotic characteristics, one includes the physical state, which includes the physical descriptors of the abiotic component. So in case of the marine system, it's on the marine shelf, water clarity, and the microplastic concentrations. When it comes to the chemical state, it includes the descriptors of the chemical composition of the abiotic ecosystem components, mainly the chlorophyll concentration, the oxygen concentration, the pH, and the DO. And in terms of the biotic characteristics, we have 3 components: the compositional state, structural state, and the functional state. So among the compositional state, it includes characteristics such as the presence or the absence of abundance of a particular species or a taxonomic group. Structural state, it mainly deals on the biomass thing, amount of living of the dead matter, and the functional state includes the processes, the ecosystem processes which are involved in that. So I will be talking about the programs which we at NCCR do and how which are contributing to develop the ocean condition accounts. We have a program on the seawater quality monitoring and another program on the marine litter and the microplastics, which can contribute to the abiotic characteristics. And for the biotic characteristics, we have a program called as the Coastal Resource Assessment and the Management, wherein we work on the coral reefs. But there's another state here which I have not mentioned, is the functional state. So of course, we don't work on the higher trophic levels, but mainly on the lower trophic organisms, mainly on the plankton and the benthos. But on the higher trophic like the fisheries, we at NCCR don't work on that particular aspect. So this is the program which I mentioned, the Seawater Quality Monitoring Program. This program is almost being done from the last 3 decades, wherein the water is collected, coastal water quality up to 5 kilometers is monitored at periodic intervals along pan-India basis for the different parameters. So I mentioned here, due to paucity of time, I'm not explaining that. And this data we regularly share with the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and that goes into the InviStats and forms part of the natural capital accounting and valuation of the ecosystem services. And also we do share the information as required by the Niti Aayog and the input for the SDG 14.1. This is another program which on the marine plastics. So we have the research component, which we are trying to, we have started this from the last 3 years. So it involves the assessment and the quantification of the marine litter and the microplastics in the biota, in the water sediment and the biota. And we look at the behavior, how these plastics behave in the environment, and also try to study on the ecological impact of this microplastics. Also, we do conduct citizen science awareness. through beach cleaning exercises, wherein we create awareness also as we get the data on the quantity of the beach litter on the beaches of India. And as I mentioned, there's a program on the coastal resource assessment and management. There are different coral ecosystems in India: Gulf of Mannar, Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar, and Gulf of Kutch. Right now, we are conducting studies only in the Gulf of Mannar, wherein we do the monitoring of the corals, the state of the corals, whether how much percentage is bleached or how much in good condition. Where all the bleached, we do the restoration activities, trying to restore the degraded coral systems. And this is my final slide. Some of the challenges are there. As we see that there are a lot of activities being done by the different organizations on ocean monitoring. So a lot of data is there, but we need to integrate all the fragmented data. That is one of the challenges is there. And we need to focus on strengthening our understanding of the ocean through improved monitoring, ocean monitoring and the assessment. It's unlike the monitoring on the terrestrial ecosystem. It's very challenging to conduct studies in the oceans. So which involves a lot of development of the infrastructure as well as the development of the manpower. And one of the another challenges is there are divergent approaches in different countries. But for developing the ecosystem conditions, we cannot standardize given the what are the different range of ecosystem types and the differences across the countries. But there is always a way forward. It's because now most of the countries began to work on developing the ocean accounts. So a lot of knowledge will evolve over time as more and more countries start implementing this, developing these ocean accounts. So networking and the sharing best practices and overcoming outstanding challenges are one of the way forward to achieve this ocean accounting. Finally, I would like to thank MOSPI for giving me an opportunity to share our thoughts and the experiences. Yeah, thank you. I kept my presentation very brief. It was 10 minutes.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Ramu. That's very nice of you.
Yeah.
It's been very enriching to really see the kind of data collection process that NCCR is doing, and which actually feeds very well into the ocean accounting process. As a last presenter, I would like to request Dr. James, who is an environment and resource economist with 30 years experience with the World Bank. He's currently working with the World Bank. He specializes in the economics of restoration, focusing on valuation of ecosystem goods and services, as well as conservation of regenerative agriculture. He's been associated with various universities also. And I request Dr. James to speak on challenges for ocean accounting and the global best practices in addressing such challenges. Over to you, Dr. James.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to share some ideas with you on the valuation of marine and coastal ecosystem services, and greetings from South Africa. I just would like to confirm that you can hear me and that you can see my slides.
Yes, we can hear you and also see your slides. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. One of the good things about working in marine and coastal ecosystem services is that one does get the opportunity to go to very beautiful places. And I'm going to share some of those experiences that we have had doing 3 case studies, but I will be very brief. We've done the evaluation of the coastal and marine ecosystem services of Dubai, of Abu Dhabi, and then here in South Africa, one of the more beautiful bays called Algoa Bay. And I'm going to touch briefly on 5 different aspects, starting with the definition and the rationale for doing the valuation of coastal and marine ecosystem services. And there could be a variety of different rationales, but the rationale, the motivation, that which drives you to actually do the evaluation is actually very important, because that also helps to demarcate help to demarcate the study focus and to help you in terms of what sort of aspects you need to value. Because very often, because of time and resource constraints, one cannot value everything when you have a specific confined time and resources in order to do the valuation exercise in. Within the context of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, it was quite clear that there is the risk of losing the amenity values, that which Abu Dhabi and Dubai is very famous for, in terms of it from a marketing perspective, marketing itself as a tourism destination of choice, that is at risk because of harmful algae blooms affecting the tourism industry. And so we're asking the question, what is the trade-offs because of the various opportunity costs involved in losing the marine and coastal ecosystem services because of harmful algae blooms? And then be able to derive valuation methods, approaches, in order to be able to answer that specific question, and from there on, then different policy recommendations in order to how one can then avoid the harmful algae blooms and the effects that it may or may not have then on the economy of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And then in the context of South Africa, Alcoa Bay, it is about the resource use and the demarcation of what areas of the specific bay must be for recreational use, what areas must be for conservation, and what must be for industrial use, and what are the trade-offs in order to, within the different zonings of that specific bay. And that also influences it. And in order to be able to determine that rationale requires the engagement of a variety of stakeholders. Having done the rationale, it's very important, as the previous speakers have said and laid out as well, is to think in terms of the mapping of the specific area. And there could be a huge differences in terms of the demarcation because of how the resources are been described in different resources. As the previous speakers have also indicated, that there's not a uniformity about different definitions, and we can get different definitions around different resource areas. But within the Alcoa Bay area, it is still relatively simple. When thinking of Abu Dhabi, which is much more like an archipelago, with a wide range of marine resources, it becomes very complex. And again, that is so important to clarify the demarcation of the specific resources and to be able to highlight which resources are are generating which ecosystem services for which people and in order to do the valuation exercise. And this mapping component and the demarcation component is both challenging but also extremely necessary to go through because of the effects that it has on the valuation exercise. Going then to the appropriate valuation method. Once we've defined the rationale, we know why we want to do it, we know where we want to do it in terms of the mapping, we can then select the valuation method. Within the context of both Abu Dhabi and Dubai, the question, as I've highlighted, was around the potential loss of the amenity values related to the tourism sector because of how the Abu Dhabi and Dubai was positioning itself as a place as a destination of choice. And so we have utilized contingent valuation methods extensively with a large number of surveys among both beachgoers as well as the people then utilizing the hotel and the hospitality industry. We've utilized both willingness to pay and willingness to accept methods. Usually the willingness to accept method is secondary to the willingness to pay method. Willingness to pay method providing with a more conservative estimate, with a willingness to accept a more liberal value, a much higher value. In this case, the willingness to accept method was considered to be appropriate because of how the municipality, how the authorities are marketing the two destinations, and therefore what is at risk, the opportunity cost of what is at risk, is linked to the marketing of the two different venues. Within the context of Alcoa Bay in South Africa, we've used a whole string of different valuation methods that are all linked to different ecosystem services and displayed across.
आजादी का महोत्सव क्या कर रही है तो सुबह से मीटिंग ही लेके रख दिया.
Sorry, can somebody?
There's a crosstalk. Please mute yourself. Somebody. Please go ahead, Dr. James.
Thank you very much. And these valuation methods are then distributed across the different ecosystems. And the X's are indicated by what we have been able to value. The question marks are those that we haven't done any valuation around, but where there will be values, and the blanks are the ones that's probably not appropriate to value or not, data will not be available. And then after selecting the valuation methods, going into the actual calculations thereof and the sharing of those results, the results that then feeds into the ocean accounts and other various different policy documents. And within that, we see quite a big distribution. Not going to go into the details, but the difference between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, with Dubai, the costs of the algae bloom extremely high, affecting mostly the tourists with a lesser impact on the residents, which then basically, but where it is coming to the offset cost, it's the offset cost, the cost that people would be willing to pay to go to a second beach or to another place. It affects the residents more than what it affects the tourists. And so we see a distributional effect also from the data. And having know both the quantum as well as to be able to differentiate between the who it will affect, help us to identify what would be the most appropriate policies that needs to be followed by doing the valuation and feeding it into the various accounts. With respect to the South African case, the Alcoa Bay case, we can differentiate between the different ecosystems, spread it across the different categories of ecosystem services, and then see what the effects of it will be on the individual ecosystem services. From a local resident's perspective, it is recreation and tourism. That is the biggest service that's been rendered by a long mile. By about 80% of the services is linked to recreation and tourism, which basically implies that if you have a policy in order to double or even quadruple the food component, the provision services, it will increase the food provisioning services by a small amount compared to the total. But if there's any feedback effects in terms of a deteriorating quality, then it might affect the recreation and tourism by a long, quite considerably, because of the interaction between the different ecosystem services. And so this becomes very important feeding into the account from a policy perspective. But this is from a local resident's perspective. Doing the same exercise from a global perspective, the situation changes. From a global perspective, supporting services are important, existence and request values becomes important, and the recreation component is then smaller. Lastly, the results have to be communicated, and this is my last slide. Basically distributed this through a variety of different academic papers, book chapters, websites. There are a large number of different means through which the information can be disseminated to the stakeholders. There's also a video that the Abu Dhabi municipality has made, distributed it among their stakeholders and share the information going forward. And Mr. Chair, thank you very much to you and to the organizers for providing me with this opportunity to share some of the work that we have done outside of India. But while I was listening to the colleagues speaking, I could hear and see that the issues and the challenges that the colleagues have in India identical to what we have had in doing some of the works elsewhere. And it was a privilege participating in this symposium. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's heartening to hear the kind of issues that we are facing in India, quite similar, or at least there is a possibility of learning from other country experiences in this context. Thank you very much. In the past, because of the time constraints, we are not able to really go through the question answers. There were some questions on the chat box, and I'm glad to see that my colleagues, the co-speakers, responded to the questions posed. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers, Dr. Uday Bhaskar, Dr. Shinoz, Dr. Ramu, and Dr. James, for sharing with us their insights on the way in which we can take the process on ocean accounting forward in Indian context. With this, I would conclude the panel discussion. I'll hand it over to Ma'am Savitri for